Day 13. Unbelievable. You know the deal. You know the deal. Last sentence that we read was, in the end, she stayed at home until Tessa, who was the youngest, was 4, and ultimately managed to strike a happy medium by working part-time at the local council. However, Tessa would often watch as her mother chastised her father for assuming that it was her responsibility to do the lion's share of domestic work simply because she was a woman. Tessa remembered being irritated at the time as she felt her mother was constantly complaining. Now, looking back, she understands. She has become her mother. She recognizes her mother's struggle to find a way out, to step up, to ask for what she needed. For too long, it has been easier to take care of everyone else's needs before her own. It sounded like Tessa's mother had strived to find a balance between motherhood and part-time work. However, without any family support, she felt powerless. She was constantly spinning plates, and any one of them could fall at any time. Now, Tessa was experiencing a similar sense of lacking agency. She felt her mother had devoted her life to Tessa and her siblings, and she had to do the same. Her blind spot was her inability to see that she did have agency and that it was possible to seek external support in order to pursue her professional dreams. Tessa knew what she wanted, a new career as an interior designer. Her future path had been something she'd agonized over for a long time before she finally took the plunge and quit her job. The decision had been stressful for her, but decisions are like plasters waiting to be removed. Once you pull off the plaster, you might be pleasantly surprised with how well the wound has healed. Once you make a decision, you can often find the peace and clarity that has evaded you. Every one of us has the freedom to take charge and do things at will, which I try to reiterate as much as possible to my clients. Freedom means taking responsibility for our actions and choices. This can be frightening. Having complete control can feel unfamiliar and overwhelming, especially if you're not used to it. It's easier to blame external factors for our problems and misgivings. It's also easier to be submissive. We hold on tight to the false belief that changing the things around us will be what makes all the difference. But often, this is not the case. Deep down, Tessa believed she had limited agency. She did not feel she had the power to change things, to ask her husband to work with her to find a childcare solution that might enable her to work. There was a sense of inertia, and Tessa was holding on to it. Tessa's mother had given up work to look after Tessa and her siblings, and now she was following the same pattern, an inherited sense of powerlessness, holding them both hostage. I wanted Tessa to see that she had more agency than she believed she was capable of. Literary reflective practice using novel and memoir therapy. To help Tessa feel more powerful and empowered, I suggested a bibliotherapy technique I refer to as literary reflective practice using novel and memoir therapy. So literary reflective practice using novel and memoir therapy, how it works. The novel is sogged with humanity. Oh, and that's a quote from E.M. Forster, whose books I have read forever. Literary reflective practice using novels and memoirs follows the literary reflective practice framework outlined on page 74 of this book. The novel form was popularized in the 19th century and captured the cultures and attitudes of the time, exploring people's social, emotional, and cognitive capabilities through characters in a way literature had never done before. It examined people's interior and exterior lives, diving into their true selves and their false selves, and inviting ways of looking at life that may or may not have been conventional, offering in-depth vistas into an author's mind. Fiction allows for the greatest expressions of human life, often ones that we would be too scared or overwhelmed to explore in real life. Novels offer escapism and perspective and enable us to access both our conscious and unconscious minds from a distance, from a safe place. A safe space is key. Feeling safe allows us to let our guards down or relax our defenses and begin to explore feelings that we may have been avoiding, perhaps because they are too painful, or perhaps because it's hard to access them or pinpoint what exactly we are feeling. As we reflect and observe, sometimes we can connect to these feelings and process them ourselves by expressing them through the written or spoken word. We may find we can discover insights and explore coping strategies through the literature. At other times, we may need the help of a counselor or therapist to work through these thoughts and observations. Memoir behaves similarly, with its exploration of the character and self. After working with both forms, like regular therapy, can reset our mental space, giving us distance and time to reconsider our present lives. Someone once said that reading a novel or memoir was like taking a hit of a narrative drug, and I could not agree more. Through the use of characters, emotion, and language, novels and memoirs enable the reader to empathize and relate to the protagonists. By exploring the experiences of fictional or unknown characters, readers activate similar neural pathways to those they would when experiencing real-life situations through third-person theory of mind. According to a 2013 study, literary fiction specifically can improve theory of mind because of the narrative being character-driven rather than plot-driven and focusing on a character's innermost thoughts and feelings, triggering these theory of mind processes through simulation and, as a result, empathy. Memoirs follow a similar character-driven narrative, giving us access to a memorist's innermost thoughts and feelings. And so, a male reader in the West can suddenly relate to a female teenager in India, or a Scandinavian native can empathize with a member of the Maori tribe by reading Maori novels. Kerry Holmes' prize-winning The Bone People comes to mind as an excellent example. To get Tessa started on this reflective practice, I recommended Rachel Cusk's A Life's Work, as it explores the complexity of motherhood without judgment, and I hoped it would offer Tessa a space to explore and honor her own conflicting feelings. To encourage Tessa to assert herself more, I also suggested that she read Rana El Kalaboy's Girl Decoded, a memoir about El Kalaboy's goal to pioneer the world's first emotional intelligence technology that would capture the unseen emotions in voice, body language, and facial expressions that are often lost over text. In pursuit of her dream, she gave up everything she knew in Egypt, including her husband, her family, and a cultural community, and settled in Boston, where she was better equipped to make her dream a vision. A story of transformation, but also one of personal power and pursuit. It shows that sometimes we have to challenge ourselves to take the path less traveled in order to find greater joy and fulfillment. Reading fictional or real-life stories of personal transformation encourages us to reconsider our own pain and illuminates possible paths that we can take to heal and embrace transformation. And the path we take does not need to be as extreme as El Kalaboy's one. We all have our own boundaries and limits. The key is that we focus on our inner power and agency to make the changes we need to make for ourselves so that our own needs and goals can be met. There is no fixed version of the self. Our personalities are modular and adaptable. Different people and situations bring out different sides of us. But Tessa felt she was stuck in a box labeled mother and wife. And so she was desperate to access the other parts of her that were seemingly locked away. She wanted to show the world that, yes, she was a mother, and yes, she was a wife, but that she also existed beyond both of these roles. She wanted the people around her to know that she was so much more. She wanted to be seen for who she truly was. As part of my approach to novel and memoir therapy, I asked Tessa to engage in a literary reflective practice with the memoirs that I had suggested. As she read the passages, I wanted her to keep 3 questions in mind. 1, what feelings were coming up for her as she read and reflected? What was the significance of the emotions that were aroused? 2, were there any passages or moments in the text that particularly resonated with her? Why did they resonate? 3, with the awareness she had gained, what was the best path for her to move forward? What were her goals and what were the next steps in making them happen? Tessa came to the next session with her notes from this exercise, and I was curious to read about what she had discovered through this process. She mentioned that she had found herself drawn to Elena Ferrante's The Lost Daughter, the story of a middle-aged divorced English professor who has an estranged relationship with her daughters after pursuing her professional career and engaging in an affair as a young mother, leaving the care of her daughters to her ex-husband and remaining largely absent. Tess had also included notes from this. She wrote, when Ferrante states that the hardest thing to talk about are the ones that we ourselves can't understand, I could totally resonate with those words. My own ambivalence, like leaders, began to ring true. Initially, it starts as an annoyance, and then you realize that it's Groundhog Day, day in and day out. Literally looking for a break, and when a break comes, like Kusk states in A Life's Work, the prospect is exciting, for it is when the baby sleeps that I liaise, as if I were a lover with my former life. These liaisons, though always thrilling, are often frantic. I dash about the house, unable to decide what to do, to read, to work, to telephone my friends. Then it became clear that this was going to be for life. It had never occurred to me the weight of the responsibility. The weight of the responsibility I was taking on until I was in it. No matter how much people warn you what it will be like when you have children, a lifelong commitment, there's no escape. You don't fully realize what this means. Annoyance turns into despair and then into dread, knowing that tomorrow will bring the same burden of domestic life. To me, this is how I read Ferrante's words in those initial pages, an inability to fathom what we are currently feeling and why we are feeling so negative, when motherhood is meant to be this joyous event that's filled with love. Of course, I love being a mother, and my children are so incredibly precious to me. But no one tells you how much of yourself you are giving up, especially of the previous lives and identities you have known. Having children is one of the biggest life-changing identity shakers out there, and it takes a while for that to sink in. Both The Lost Daughter and A Life's Work have shown me that it's okay to feel both love and frustration. Unfortunately, mothers do not receive enough support, and this is where the conflict between motherhood and careerhood arises. As women, we're made to choose, to feel like we're allowed one or the other. As Kusk writes in A Life's Work, but the issue of children and who looks after them has become, in my view, profoundly political, and so it would be a contradiction to write a book about motherhood without explaining to some degree how I found the time to write it. For the first 6 months of Albertine's life, I looked after her at home while my partner continued to work. This experience forcefully revealed to me something to which I had never given much thought, the fact that after a child is born, the lives of its mother and father diverge, so that where before they were living in a state of some equality, now they exist in a sort of feudal relationship to each other. A day spent at home caring for a child could not be more difficult from a day spent working in an office. Whatever their relative merits, there are days spent on opposite sides of the world. Kusk's words encapsulated everything I had been feeling. In being able to acknowledge this, I feel free to move forward. I believe I can transform these feelings into something more positive for the future. A few weeks later, once we had finished our sessions, Tessa emailed that she had found Rana Calaboy's story in Girl Decoded inspirational. That's 15 minutes. See you for day 14. Bye.